Hello gamers, Power Word Heal here, and today we're gonna cover the Pre-BiS list. You guys have been requesting this. It's gonna be the Pre-BiS list for before the raid. I'm gonna get right into it, and we're gonna establish kind of like a couple ground rules for the list. It'll be pretty simple, and then I'm kind of gonna go through some of the items on here, and I'm gonna actually go into game and show some other stuff as well. And we'll talk about talents a little bit too, because they intermingle a bit here, and the talent choice will be sort of important for what you're trying to go for. I may even give like an alternative kind of gear set, to be honest. So basically, for the rules, what we're going to do is nothing from the instance itself, obviously, and that includes crafting stuff that's going to require materials from the raid, because obviously that wouldn't make sense, right? Because you're not going to have the stuff when you go into the raid. So that's off the table, and anything that's like from a rare that's like super difficult to kill or something like that, because I think there's some stuff like that on here. Like there's like some super high level elites and stuff. We won't really be bothering with that. I mean, I'm sure it's like possible to get that stuff, and it probably wouldn't even be that bad necessarily, but we don't know how camped it's going to be, or like if you're going to be able to have help. I want this to be for people that they can basically just have access to this, right? They don't have to worry about needing 10 friends to go and kill a mob that's like 10 levels higher than them to get this Pre-BiS thing to then go into the raid that they're going to kill anyway, no matter what. And I think that's the other thing too that should be pointed out about this is a lot of people are kind of, really going ham with like Pre-BiS and stuff like that and min-maxing for this, and I don't think it's going to be all that serious. I completely understand why people are doing it, because, it's kind of going to be the big thing at level 25, right? And there's not a ton else to do outside of the Ashen Veil PvP. So it makes sense that people are going to optimize around the thing that there is to do. That and probably Warsong and then World PvP, right, are probably going to be the main activities. So it makes total sense, but I just wouldn't worry about it too much. I think you're probably going to be able to get in there with like questing greens and just smash. I think it would be kind of a design mistake if that is not the case. And I don't really know how seriously people are going to take speed clearing BFD and parsing BFD, but I'm sure some people will. But you'll probably easily be able to find a group, so I wouldn't worry too much about stuff like that. It's probably going to be very puggable too, I assume. So you may not even need guild access or anything like that. So to start us off, I do want to go back into the talents for just a second, because like I said, the build I'm probably going to be running is something like this, right? And does this not tell you the level? It's troll? Oh, it does. Okay. I was like, they're trolling. Yeah, I'll just put 2 points in here. Well, I probably will take Holy Nova at first, just because like we're not sure what the content requires. Maybe it might be useful. It is technically an AoE heal after all, right? But yeah, so this is probably what I'm going to be running. Like I said, mainly for this, but also just for the Improve Renew, as well as Inspiration. And then potentially, like as you get more geared, if there's a good gear in the raid, we don't really have all the raid gear right now. You could swap over to something like this potentially, right? Something like that, or put the points anywhere. Now, the reason why it's important we're talking about spec in the gear video is because this is like the only way you're gonna have access to in combat mana regen, like unless they start giving us a ton of MP5 from the actual dungeon. But again, that's kind of irrelevant for the purposes of this video, right? So basically, like spirit that you get is not going to be so hot unless you have this talent, and even then you're only getting 15% of it, right? So it's not like when you're in Blackwing Lair on your priest and you have 3-piece tier 2 plus this, you're basically like getting half of the effectiveness of that, right? And something is better than nothing, but keep in mind you're probably not going to have that much spirit to begin with at this level, and you're only getting 15% of that, so it's not going to be a huge amount of mana regen that you're getting back whatsoever. So that's why we're opting to just go for the Divine Fury, but not taking this kind of changes the gearing decisions a bit, right? Because if we come into here, you'll see some of this stuff has spirit on it, right? And honestly, I'm really not sure how useful the spirit is going to be in the raid overall, because it kind of depends, right, on what is the problem points of the raids. For example, is there a lot of trash? Is it a long raid in that aspect? Are the boss encounters long, right? And how I would kind of break it down is the more time you have to spend on trash, the more spirit is going to be valuable, right? Because when you're out of combat, so when you just kill the trash mob or you move from one pack to another, I don't know exactly how it's going to be, you're still getting the spirit regen, right? So when you sit down drinking, you're still getting it, and you may come back into combat at some point, potentially, even while drinking. So you may lose the regen then, but you're probably going to have it for at least a certain period, and you may have it for like the entire time you're drinking, depending on if you can stay out of combat, right? And that means that during all that time, it's going to be active and it's going to be at full value. So at that point, you don't even need anything like meditation, right? Because you're not going to be casting or anything like that, and you're not going to be in combat. So you're getting full value out of it. So something like that is useless there. So spirit is going to be useful in that aspect, and spirit does have like a good regen coefficient for priest. Like if you compare what spirit does for priest compared to like shaman, for example, or paladin, it's just better for priest, right? So you're going to notice having a bit more spirit on your gear when you're sitting down to drink versus the other classes. So I don't think we should be completely ignoring spirit. However, with that being said, for boss fights, you're not basically going to get any amount of regen unless you're in the 5-second rule, right? And currently, we don't know how the bosses are going to be. My gut feeling is it's kind of going to be very similar to Molten Core, where they're short encounters. So I'm thinking maybe like 1 to 3 minutes long, honestly. That would be my guess. I can't really imagine them being longer than that. But if they are longer than that, it's kind of interesting, because that is going to require a playstyle adjustment, and they'll most likely be balanced, where you have to use your efficient heals and then use your like really try and take advantage of that 5-second rule. And if you do that, then spirit becomes much more valuable, right? Because now when you actually don't cast for 5 seconds, you get the regen bump, which is taking into account your spirit. So it's really just a toss-up, and how I would approach the gearing is anything you get while you're leveling that has spirit and int on it, or like if it has a majority spirit or majority int or only spirit, I would keep all that stuff and just toss it in a bank somewhere or something. Or if it's a BOE, you could just send it to a bank alt. And then, you can just work it out kind of afterwards in terms of like what's good. Like we'll know more once we actually start getting into the raid and doing stuff. But until then, it's going to be hard to know. So this is just pure speculation. But assuming they are short fights and we have to spam cast, then intellect is actually going to be probably the best thing you can you can really invest into for multiple reasons, right? First, it's just giving you more spell casts, right? And there is like a crit component there. I don't really like to reference the crit component typically, because especially with the amount of intellect you are going to get at this level, like I think it shows us here. Yes, this has 143 intellect. I don't think it's fully buffed. It might be. It doesn't have like arcane intellect and stuff. I'll put some of this stuff on just so we can see what we look like raid buffed here. And this isn't important, right? I'll put Fort on just to see. This is like the same thing as this. I don't think these stack, right? So yeah, this is pretty much what we'll have. So we have 155 intellect. So I think it's like 60 int per crit or something like that. And this may be already taking into account the crit that we have. I'm not entirely sure. We can actually test it if we take off the buff here. Should change. Okay, yeah. So I think that's already taking into account like all of our crit. And we'll actually we'll do the proper spec here just so that I'll do something like that. So the max you're gonna have is like 14% crit. You'll have maybe like 13% if you put the other point in Holy Nova. So crit is not going to be, you're not gaining a ton of crit from intellect. You're gaining like 3%, if that, right? So that's not going to be a big consideration, but it's mostly just the fact that you have more, like a bigger mana pool raw, and you're going to be starting the fight with 100% mana ideally. And when you're on trash, you're going to be trying to drink to full as much as possible. Right, because that's going to be the most effective way you can use your larger mana pool. Because keep in mind, if you don't actually top off your mana, you're not really benefiting from it, if that makes sense, right? Like if you're just staying at like 50% mana the whole time, you'd be much better off having Spirit even. So you want to try and drink aggressively. I'm not sure if tick drinking is like back in. Regardless if tick drinking isn't back in, which tick drinking is basically like, it allows you to like continue moving, and then basically on the frame, like where your character gets regen, because I think how it works is when your character would normally regen, that's also when you would regen from taking the drink. So your drinking animation is kind of like doing nothing for a certain period of time, and then it ticks at a certain point. So it's about like timing that tick, with like the natural regen, I guess, tick that's by, like you can just get like there's like an add-on or a weak aura if you search it on the weak aura website. I think it's Wago.io or something like that, and it'll just give you your like your 5-second rule thing, like your tick timer, and you just like you drink at like the end of it, and you don't have to be drinking the entire time. Now, there was, I think in Classic, like in 2019, you could actually do this while moving, because of the batching or something like that, but I think that they fixed it for some, but we may be on like that Classic era client. I'm not sure if they fixed it in this, but regardless, you can still basically use that same idea. It's just that you may have to actually full stop and drink. Instead of being able to do it while moving. But it's still an advantage because you still don't have to be sitting there the entire time wasting all of that drink animation, if it makes sense, right? So even if it's nerfed, it's still effective to some degree. But yeah, like you really want to be keeping your mana up if you're going to be playing the int build, because otherwise there's no point in stacking int, right? If you're not kind of like having all of that int available at the start of every fight. But the other reason why I like the int as well is that we'll have some things like recombobulators here, and I think this is like the biggest one we can get. There's like a one that's like major, I believe, but I think it's too high level. But I think we can use these. We can probably use double these because they're not unique. Yeah, especially because we won't have any other trinkets most likely early on. And then I don't even have a wand here. These are all named wands, so they don't have, okay. Yeah, we'll look at that in a second. But, yeah, you'll have 2 of those, and then you'll have, like, a mana potion. And I think that's all you're going to have for consumes. I'm pretty sure. For, like, mana consumes, at least. Because I don't think you can't use Nightfin yet. And stuff like that. There may be a lower-level fish that you can use for MP5 or something like that. I have to look into that. But, regardless, that's not really an active consume. So the idea is that by having a bigger mana pool, you can kind of last a little bit longer, and if you aggressively pot, right, so you basically want to pot as soon as you're about to hit the point where your pot would bring you to 100%, right, and then having that bit of extra mana can be nice, because sometimes it can be just enough to get you to that second potion, or sometimes, depending if the fight is long enough, that third potion, etc., or your recombobulator may come off cooldown or something like that. I think these kind of have a long cooldown, though. And I think it says Dispel Poly here, but I'm 90% sure they don't have to actually be under the effect of Polymorph, because I remember using these, I think, in Molten Core or something like that, and people were definitely not getting polyed in Molten Core, right? Unless something weird was happening. So yeah, I think that's going to be kind of like the strategy is max int, essentially. And drink aggressively, max int, pot aggressively, The pots should be super cheap, honestly. So that'll be good. And then you have the recombobulators and stuff like that. And so with that being said, that's kind of like the philosophy behind the gearing. And we're going to start to get into the gearing a little bit here. And then we'll talk about some alternatives. I'll go into game and show you guys what I mean. So right off the bat, we have shadow goggles. Now, a lot of people are probably going to use these. I think I'd honestly prefer to use the shadow goggles. It kind of depends if you think you're going to be able to make really good use of something like Renew, then this gains like a bit more value. But you have to realize that these have no stats on them at all, and this 21 healing. First of all, it's damage and healing, right? So the way it's balanced is for damage, essentially. It's not like this is like a pure healing piece. If it was a pure healing piece, it would be higher. So it's already being balanced for damage, so it's not as much as it could be for the eye level. And then on top of that, it's getting hit by the spell coefficients, right? Which a lot of them are going to be bad that you're going to be using. There's only like, remember we talked in the last video, there's only 3 spells that actually use even the normal spell coefficient. And Renew is 100%, which is a good one. Heal is, I believe, 80 or like 84%. So that's a pretty decent one. But the Flash Heal, I think, is like 0.44 or something like that. So it's not even going to be like super beneficial for all your spells. You're getting like maybe 10 healing on the top. And something about plus healing, which I'm going to talk about probably more as we kind of level up in this this season, because we'll have access to more plus healing, is that plus healing is often seen as like by far the best stat you can get for a healer. And the reasoning that's used typically is something like, well, if you get more plus healing, it allows you to like down rank more, right? And that allows you to save mana that way. But the reality of the situation is that in a lot of cases, you kind of need to hit like certain amounts of plus healing before this is really possible. So the concept that you need plus healing on gear is simply a reality, right? Because if you don't have any plus healing on gear, you won't have these down ranks available, and you're just missing out on a lot of healing efficiency, right? You won't even, and it's not like you just miss it on the down ranks, you miss it on all the ranks, right? But when you're looking at any one piece of gear, always keep in mind that is not going to make or break like your ability to downrank a spell. And how Classic tends to work is that there's a lot of pieces in this game that tend to be unanimously BiS, I would call it, for a given like level range or bracket. And that's probably going to be the case even when the raid gear comes out, and for the next raids at 30 and 40, and the ones at 50 and then 60. Right? I don't know how much they're going to change the 60 pre-BiS, but even if they don't change it at all, it's still kind of like that, where there's some things that stand out by far the best, and then there's other things that are kind of like borderline, and you can swap out for other things. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you focus on getting the pieces that are like really good, for example, like one of these pieces at level 60 is the Dire Maul leggings. They're like 20 int or something, 6 MP5 and 40 plus healing. They're basically your tier 2 pants. They just don't have spirit on them and stamina. But otherwise, they're basically like your tier 2 pants. It's like an insanely efficient item. And there's a bunch of items like that, maybe not quite as efficient, but the same concept, where they're basically best in class by far. And if you pick up all those items, then on those, like, on certain pieces, like, for example, the common piece that people have a hard time getting to drop at level 60 is, like, the animated chain neck, which is, like, 33 healing, but it has no int and, like, 6 spirit, like, terrible stats on it. If you have the rest of your BiS, right, it makes no difference at all swapping that out with, like, the amulet from Drek, or the AV amulet, or there's other amulets you can get depending on what's out in the game. I would say the Silithus amulet is even better, although I don't know if that's going to be out at the time. But so never get hung up on like, oh, this individual slot needs to be perfectly BiS, unless the item is like actually leagues better than the alternative. in that slot. For example, I would never want to replace those Dire Maul pants with anything else, right? Because they're just so good. They're so above the next option, but not every piece is going to be like that. And Animated Chain Necklace, despite it being the only piece that has plus healing, like when you actually factor in like the stats in terms of the MP5 and the raw int, you know, it's not really that much better or even better at all in some cases than the neck from Drake. In some cases, I think the neck from Drek could be better. So keep that in mind as we're kind of going through some of this stuff. And yeah, there's no piece that will tend to be like completely. There's pieces that are kind of irreplaceable, and we'll kind of go over those, but they're less likely to occur at low levels. I'll put it that way as well, because the budgets, I feel like, tend to be a bit more uniform. So we're not going to see a lot of those cases like the Dire Maul pants, which means a lot of this stuff can kind of be like swapped out and stuff like that, right? So this is like a really good case where the, you know, just the alternative here is not, it's only one piece of plus healing gear at the end of the day, and it's passing through the coefficient, so it's not going to make or break you by any means. So yeah, but this is what I would choose. The thing is, if you don't go engineering, it is going to be a bit rough phase 1, and I kind of, if you actually do want to raid seriously, like, and you want to min-max for BFD, I would recommend going engineering, because first of all, getting this is good, right? Because the other options at level 25 for Helm, we can actually pop in right here and check. We can go cloth, head, 20 to 25, right? And this is the server that farms everybody. It farms all the low-level people, right? It's the hardcore server, and puts them back in Ellenwyn. And then they level up to like 30 and die again. So this is literally the perfect kind of auction house to check, I feel like, for stuff like this. And there is nothing here except for like a white hood, right? So you're basically going to be without a helm if you don't go engineering. Or they may have, like, the fishing thing is here. But I don't know if it's going to be in the game. I kind of don't think we're going to be in that phase, but we'll see. So, yeah. That's basically your only option if you want stats or plus healing on helm. And if you want to go the spell power thing, that's not super wrong either. You can always go that. Like, it's not going to be make or break, right? So that's the helm slot. Also, you're not going to get the recombobulators if you don't go engineering. So another good reason to go engineering in phase 1. So when you come into here, again, this is from the raid, so we're not counting this. But I want you to pay attention, because this is an actual raid drop, allegedly, right? I believe this is not the old one. I think this is the new one. I think it was from the stream. This is one of the bosses they fought at BlizzCon, I believe. And you see that it's basically giving you the same amount of, like, how would you say, healing stat, right? And you're only getting, like, 4 more stamina, which is not bad at this level, but you are getting, like, stamina from it, right? So some of these items, even from the raid, are not going to be make or break or all that good necessarily. Oh, I guess they do have the greens, but they just don't. I wonder if I click this, it doesn't let me. Huh. Okay, what about... It doesn't... Oh, okay, it does show me the ranges. Okay, that's kind of cool. Okay, so, yeah, basically, like, these are going to have a prefix. Okay, no, it's both, yeah. So it's just a suffix. But, as you can see, they have that variable range. So, if you can't get this, right, actually, what I would recommend is you would probably get this. I would change this. And I would go either pure int of intellect or spirit int of the owl. Either one of those work. It's basically whatever you can get your hands on. I tend to think that stuff that has intellect spirit on it will be a little bit better for these sort of like random items like this. It's a little bit difficult to explain. I'm going to try and explain it with this other item, I believe. Hold on, let me try and see if this is okay. This is perfect. So in terms of greens, right? You have stuff that's like this: ivy cloth robe of the whale, or ivy cloth robe of whatever, and that has the suffix on it, and it's gonna have either 2 stats, or it's gonna say like ivy cloth robe of intellect or ivy cloth robe of agility or whatever, and it's gonna have like just that stat on it, but it's gonna be higher is how it's gonna work, right? But I think what it tends to be, as you saw with the amulet, it was +6 when you have intellect, and you actually get 8 stats when you have the double stat. So unless the 1 stat is like way better for you, it's more efficient to get the double stat, the split, right? Now the one case where this doesn't apply is like named sort of items, like stuff like this, right? This just has frost damage on it, and it has 9 intellect. Now some of these are crafted, but some of these do drop as well. And they drop, like, so this will always drop like it is. It's fixed, right? It won't have prefixes or suffixes. And this is where you can kind of find stats and stuff like that are out of the normal range of like normal. So for example, okay, so this actually, wow, this gives 11. Okay. So I think, but that's because part of the budget on this item is goes to frost damage, because like you can find stuff like this in the level 40s, for example, where like you can have a robe of intellect, right? And it maybe gives like, I don't know, like 15 intellect, and then there'll be like another named robe, sort of like this, that'll give like 18 intellect. And the thing about these named items, they tend to be cheaper because, one, they're either crafted, which means they can be like obviously mass made, or they're like, I believe their drop chance from the world seems to be higher because there's only kind of like one of them, if that makes sense, right? For example, if you want to get a Watcher's Robe of intellect, when a Watcher's Robe drops, it has to literally hit like intellect right here, right? And so it has to, there's like all those other combinations that it has to go through. I think that it probably doesn't have to go through every combination. For example, like cloth gear like this maybe doesn't roll agility or doesn't roll strength. But still, even with that, there's like a decent amount of combinations that it could possibly end up as. And obviously with something like this, with a named item, it doesn't have any combinations, right? So if it drops, it's just perfect how it is. So keep an eye out for named items like this as you level, because like they tend to be kind of good and cheap, like alternatives to like what'll be dungeon or raid gear from that level bracket. Okay, so we're gonna pop back over here. Actually, what we'll do is we're gonna cross-reference every slot with the auction house here. And now this is not perfect, keep in mind, right? But this is the biggest hardcore server. Okay, so this is actually the thing that we got right here. And then this is actually not a bad choice either. But, I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs at this point. This honestly may be more impactful than this. But either way, you're not getting a ton out of either of them. Because, like I said, this is probably only going to be active when you're doing trash and drinking on trash and stuff like that. And this is something like this is just not good in this case. See how this, like, it's a named item, and it's just better than this. It's also, like, probably more common than this. You see way more of these. And this had to roll spirit, which sort of makes it more valuable, but it's not really more valuable, right? Because there's an alternative with the same amount of spirit here. So that's kind of like how that works. So we're going to try and cross-reference every item on the sheet with like greens on the auction house for alternatives for you guys. So this is from a quest. It's a little bit of a higher quest, but you can easily kind of get it done with a small group. This is not going to be like one of those, we got to fight an elite like 30 levels over us or something like that. 7 int and 7 spirit. Now, again, like I said, I tend to prefer the int, but if you give me like, oh, you can have 7 int and no spirit, or you can have 9 int and no spirit, or 7 int and 7 spirit, I'm gonna go 7 int 7 spirit, because during the trash you are gonna like notice this, right? And if you're able to take advantage of the 5-second rule, you are gonna notice it, and you should be trying to do those things during the raid. So again, spirit is not bad stat. I'm preferring intellect when I can, but we're definitely still looking to get spirit. This definitely still good, high amount of intellect, not as much spirit, but that's okay. This is fine as well, but like I said, I'd prefer to have the split stat. And then if you can't get this from the quest, this is also a quest item, right? So you can just get it, but you could always get this. I believe this comes from a monster. It's like a quest, right? Yeah, okay. So there's that. And then this is even pretty decent. Like there's a bunch of options here, as you can see. And this website is just 60 upgrades. I didn't do anything specific to make this gear pop up. You just put Season of Discovery on up top, and it kind of like will filter things out for you. So a lot of these, this is another world drop that's decent. This is another one that is, this is a Nomergon. Yeah, you wouldn't be, you're not going in there. But as you can see, like there's a lot of stuff with high intellect on it that you can just grab, basically, right? It's not that hard. So I'm going to keep these in for now, but like any of those with like high intellect will basically work. Popping in here again, this is the item from the raid, so we're not looking at that. This is, it's whatever in my opinion. Again, it's going through the coefficient. It doesn't have any intellect at this low level. I really like all my pieces to have a little bit of intellect, because think about it this way: every point of intellect is 15 mana. Okay. So basically you're getting +9 healing here, right? For 6 intellect, which when you convert that to mana, essentially, right? You're getting like 90 mana from this cape, and you're getting no mana from this other cape with 9 healing. Now, 90 mana. If we go, well, I don't have I should open the other thing, but basically, like, if you remember from the other day, a flash heal rank 1 is 125 mana, and it heals somewhere in the bracket of like 100 or 200 and something to 230 something base, I believe. And then a renew is like 100 and something mana, rank 3 renew, I believe. Rank 1 or rank 2 heal is like 185 mana, or that was the rank 1 heal, but one of those heals for like 200 to 300, and the other one heals for close to 400, I believe. So think of how many heals you have to cast, right, with this. Like, let's take the renew, right, because we have 90 mana, and I think I said the renew is basically like basically costs like 100 mana. And I think the renew heals 175 over like 15 seconds or something like that, right? So think of like how many heals you would have to cast to actually get this to equal that 175, right? But keep in mind, it's not actually just the 9 healing, because it goes through the spell coefficient, right? So, and even on something like a heal where the spell coefficient is pretty good, it's like 84%, I believe, or something like that, you're still basically, you're getting like what, 7 of this healing out of 9. So you're not even getting the full value. And then if you're using something like flash heal, you're getting something like probably 4 realistically, right? Or something like that, 4 or 5, somewhere around that. So all, like, basically you have to think of it as, like, you have to heal that many times, like, to make up the value of what you, like, of being able to cast a whole extra spell, if that makes sense, right? And you have to heal a lot of extra times, and anytime you overheal at all, the plus healing that you got from this cape is completely useless. Completely useless. It just literally went into the void, right? And just something to keep in mind there as well. That doesn't happen with like any int you get or anything like that, or any spirit, right? So really think about stuff like that when you're thinking about plus healing, right? So again, this is not a terrible option or anything, right? But I think I would rather just have the int cape, and they have a spirit version of the cape, strength and spirit, int and spirit. I think in this case I'd rather just have the 6, because the amount of like the extra two spirit there is just not really that great, right? And we can check out some of these other ones, but they basically are not the same. And then we'll pop into game here, and we'll do cloth. We'll do why am I trolling back? Okay, I thought it said strength and spirit. I need to actually, like... Yeah, so there's actually nothing here that's really... Again, you can get plus healing here, but it's going through the filter, right? So I think that, yeah, for the most part, I mean, the only thing I maybe would replace with that that cloak is if you get like one of these that's +4 spirit, +4 intellect, right? Because again, you're kind of getting close to that intellect value, but you just have 4 additional spirit. You're just getting more raw stats. And I will say something about stamina as well. I think stamina is going to be almost completely useless, because I think the raid is going to be like piss easy, just being honest. Obviously, if that's not true, we can adjust, right? If you find yourself getting one shot. And I would, honestly, if you're leveling and you come across like stamina int gear, I wouldn't be afraid to keep that either. And then you can easily, like, this is not a big investment, right? Because once you hit level 25 and you do the raid like once, you know if you need this or you don't need it. So keeping it around for, a couple levels is not really the end of the world, right? So I would just keep stuff that has spirit int, pure int, and int stam. And then you can also keep pure spirit stuff if you don't have anything else for that slot as well. Or you might be able to bait people into buying that in the auction house. Or to be honest, if it's like a miscellaneous item, druids could buy it, because druids can still make pretty good use of spirit. I'll talk about that when I make the video on them in their Pre-BiS. But yeah, I would just get... I would get like a cloak that's 4/4 here, if possible. And it doesn't look like there's really anything else. So yeah, we'll pop back into here. Okay. This is probably going to be... We'll take a look. That's like a healthy amount of spirit, to be honest. But I feel like it's not worth giving up the 9 int. Realistically, 9 int is quite a bit of mana for only 8 spirit. You're only gaining 8 spirit over this, right? And it's from Nomergon anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter even. This is a good option. Comes from tailoring. This is fine as well. All this stuff is very similar. Stuff like this, like I think like a lot of the blues you're going to be able to get, it's mostly going to be like that they have the 3rd stat on them, which is going to be stamina, right? Which is never bad to have, but I just think that the raid's going to be probably pretty easy. And when you consider the fact that you're also going to have 4 on you all the time, because you're a priest, you probably don't need, and you can also take you're also going to have inner fire on for if you take a stray hit or something like that. So you're just not going to need a ton of stamina. But any additional stamina you can get for free is fine, right? So I would definitely like use this if you can get it. But I wouldn't worry about getting it. This is interesting. Like, this has kind of a lot of intellect. But I'd still, in this case, take the 10 spirit over the 3 intellect. Yeah, I mean, it's like close enough. This is... yeah, I think that's basically... yeah. So, like, a lot of this stuff could work, as you see. Probably not this, right? But, there's a lot of stuff here that you can get that's, like, similar to that. Or you could get the, like I said, we're going to check in here. I'll just do this for everything, right? And you get something like this if you wanted. Although, like I said, I think the because it's so close, the other one was just better, right? Because why have one more intellect or two more intellect and not have any spirit and no stam? Doesn't make any sense. But you're not going to be able to get all these blues, right? So, especially day one or something, just check to see if somebody threw something up on the auction house cheap. I feel like a lot of stuff is kind of going to be cheap early because everybody knows that people don't have gold and they're just trying to... like, this stuff is going to be completely worthless later on, right? So if you don't sell it early, like, there's no point in even having looted it. I think the only barrier to getting stuff super cheap is, like, what it vendors for, really, if that makes sense. But other than that, it's going to be... I think it's going to be fine. And then for this, you can put whatever you want on here. You could put lesser stats if you want. It may be somewhat better, to be honest, I think, especially because we're going... in general, we're kind of going stamina light, right? So this would come out to be 30 mana. You get 50 mana from this. It's not a huge difference. So you could definitely get that. This might also be cheaper as well, potentially. So I would just do that. Enchant's not going to be a huge deal at low levels. So this is interesting. I think these are going to be something that's not really going to be so world drop. So this is probably going to be your BiS, but it might be hard to get. But because they actually subtract stamina, I think that there's not really a way that anything else comes close. To be honest, like, now that I'm looking at this, I almost rather just have these finger bone bracers and not have -5 stamina, right? But I guess, like, 4 intellect is kind of significant. If you look here, everything else is kind of pretty weak when you compare it to this stuff. We're going to pop into game, and we're going to do wrist, and we're going to see... okay, so this is kind of what I thought. So it gives 6. I think if you could find, like, a pure int here, it's better than taking the -5... it's better than taking the -5 stamina for sure. Unless, like, you really don't take any damage in the raid, right? If you find yourself taking, like, no damage, it's probably fine. But otherwise, I would probably just take the 6 int. But either one of those is fine. Like, I don't think you're gonna get super punished for having the -5 int. Okay. Let's go to the next one. And these slots that don't have an enchant in them, it's just because, like, there's either nothing helpful or nothing available at that level. So I don't think any of this is helpful, really. There's none for this. Yeah, you could have, like, the protections or something like that. Yeah, there's nothing even there. Nothing even there. Because that's, yeah, got the 5 int there. I'll show you what we're competing against. I would always take the int over spirit. Okay. So we'll get into the Zodiac gloves next here. Let's see. So. Oh, yeah, I actually probably would have. Well, are these from enchanting? Is that what? Oops. Oh, they're from Nomergan. Okay, that's why. That's why I picked those. But those would be better, but it's fine. This is an item, honestly, that it's like, if you wanted to get plus healing, this is kind of like the place to get it, I would say, because you're similar to your intellect here, right? You're only missing a couple, and you get 15 plus healing, which, if you were to compare it to these, the helm, first of all, the issue is the helm is supposed to be a better slot than the gloves, so it's supposed to inherently have more stats, and you almost have the same healing you're going to get from the gloves here, but you have 3 additional int from the gloves that you don't have on the goggles, right, if you were to go the healing goggles. So I think if there's a place to pick up plus healing, it's there. but really any of these is fine. This is super easy to get because it comes from the Look to the Stars quest. So, although actually I'm not sure, it may be like a later in the quest line, but regardless, something like this is good. A little bit of extra stamina, but that's going to be a world drop. It's probably going to be expensive. Something like this is fine. Another world drop. These are probably fine. And you may actually want to go tailoring again if you're trying to min-max. So you like tailoring engineering, because like when we get down to this, not to skip ahead too much, but to make this you need tailoring binds when picked up. Yeah, so I think you need to have tailoring to make this essentially. And something like this is pretty good. Maybe not necessarily super good for the instance, but I mean, it's good for the instance for sure. But it's like really good probably outside of that, right? So if you want to make stuff like this, having the profession that is associated with your class's armor class is probably going to be good. So like if you're if you're like a druid, having leatherworking, it's probably good in the druid, right? If you're a priest, having tailoring is probably good on the priest, etc. Because basically what's going to happen is, I don't think it says the mats here, but there's like a currency called like void something, and it's going to drop from either some of the bosses or like the last boss in BFD, and you're going to use that to make this. So you won't be able to craft this without that void currency, which is why it's not on the list right now, because this is Pre-BiS. But it's something to consider in the future, right? Because those are really good boots, obviously, for other reasons. Like the active on them is crazy. It's like kind of having a mini dispersion or something. So just something to keep in mind there. Let's just pop in and check the gloves real quick, right? Okay, so we get 8 here, which means, so if you see something like this, you can obviously extrapolate it's going to be 8 int as well. But, you know, I think these are kind of like the way to go. I would probably maybe use an 8 int glove over this, but the odds that you're going to find an 8 int glove, okay. Interesting. Yeah, the odds that you're going to find an 8 int glove are not super good, right? So I think you're fine just put 22 to 25. Yeah, you're fine probably using the True Faith gloves here. And they should be easy to acquire as well. So going into this, okay. So yeah, I guess this would actually be, I don't know why I had the other thing. This is just the best belt. Because it has the most int and then it has 3 spirit on it. And then something like this is probably better than this. But this is also good. This comes from a vendor. I think that's why I had this, because the vendor stuff is like super easy to get, right? And you can just go to this website, click on it. I believe it shows you the vendors. Or if you like click on this, it'll take you to where it is. This is probably better, but again, this is a vendor belt as well. Yeah. So yeah, sacrifice it. These are almost basically identical, right? You're not going to really notice the 2 spirit, but you're not also going to miss the 1 int. So this is kind of nice, maybe just for like PvP or something, but this comes from the actual raid itself again, so that's why we're not covering that. And then yeah, all this stuff is kind of like whatever, or mediocre. It's not terrible, right? But like all world drops, they can be kind of, but in this case, like again, you have access to really good belts that are just from the vendors, so I don't think that, and these will maybe even be on the auction house. Like we can actually check right now if this is on the auction house, because it says binds when equipped. So people could actually just buy it and put it up there. Let's see. Wrist, waist. Yep, Dreamer's Belt. Already there. So obviously like, this stuff is not going to be super populated initially, but like it'll be there pretty fast. The Wizard's Belt is there too. So yeah, I mean, you basically get a Wizard's Belt that's like the same as this durable belt of intellect, which would normally be really rare. So the belt slot's like super easy. Let's go into the next. Okay, this is gonna be. Yeah, this is a world drop. Yeah, I guess this is just better, right? So technically, this would be the BiS, but probably gonna be annoying to get. So these silver threaded pants are pretty much equivalent. You could even argue. I mean, they're one more into higher, right? But you get 2 more spirit. These are basically like the same item, in my opinion. Do not overpay for these. Same thing with like any of these blues. I would not overpay for blues early. They're probably not going to be like 32 gold, obviously, just because the nature of the phase. But whatever they are, do not overpay early. Those are not good. These I've used these before, and you can make them with tailoring. They're pretty good. They don't have as much int though, right? So this is like a reward from that quest. I don't know if you're really going to be doing that at that level though. I guess it's not hardcore, so you guys can rate him. Yeah, so most of the stuff is kind of like whatever. Yeah, I think that's, yeah. So we'll just double check the, and the reason why we're going into the actual thing, and we're just trying to be a little bit thorough with it, and I'm mainly looking to see, like, because we kind of know what the stats of the items with suffixes are going to be, but we're not sure of, like, the name stats. So, yeah, okay. This is the only name there. In case they didn't, like, catch a named and put it in the thing. But, yeah. So that's probably what you're going to be doing. I think these are made from the vendor as well. You probably wouldn't really want to use this, but it's not, like, that bad if you have nothing else, right? So... So this is like the first spot where, like, these are easy to make, I think, actually. Like, they just have, like, the spider silk. You could probably even farm that yourself. People might be gouging for it earlier on, but it should be pretty cheap. And if you're going tailoring, I think they'd be easy to make. So there's nothing that really compares to these boots, I think. Aside from, you can probably get, like, intellect boots. If the intellect boots are +6, which I think that they will be, then there's, like, definitely nothing better. If they're +8, then maybe you could argue you'd rather have them over this, but I think I'd still rather have the 4 stam and the 7 spirit. I don't mind giving up a little bit of intellect in some spots because we're pretty stam light overall, right? So it's never bad to have a little bit of stam at least. We're just not trying to go for it, if that makes sense. And having the 7 spirit here is nice, so I don't think anything else here really competes. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Yeah. Okay, obviously these are insane, but we're not talking about those, right? Because they're in the raid. And then we'll go and we'll check the feet. Show feet, please. Oh, so it is +8. Okay. But I think I'd still go for the other boots. But if they're going to be a pain to get, for whatever reason, you can just get +8 intellect boots, but those might be a pain to get as well, because they're going to be sort of rare, right? And it's a funny story to interrupt for 1 second to talk about stuff like this. So when I was leveling my hardcore priest, I was just like looking for gear, because I had leveled like another one. I was leveling another alt for professions, and I saw stuff like this, and I was like, wait a minute, does my wand scale with agility? This could be insane, right? Having like wand crit, but I don't think it does. Because my thought process was that for Paladin, agility is actually kind of cracked. I think especially while leveling, because it's only 20 points for like 1% crit, which is pretty good. But I believe that wand just does not scale off that at all. I don't know if it scales off spell crit or if it just is base static 5 crit, but it did not scale off agility. I'll put it that way. Or its crit did not scale off agility, so... but yeah, I would just go for like the +8 stat option, or the other one that's the other spider silk boot or whatever. Doesn't seem like there's anything good there. Okay, and Oh, these are interesting. The Black Widow. I think this is unique though, right? Yeah, it is. Okay. So Leech Widows in the Wetlands. I think this is just like, is this a quest or is this a drop? Yeah, I think it's just a drop, right? Yeah. But it seems to have a high drop chance. So, shouldn't be that hard to get, I believe. And let's just look over the other things. So this is not like terrible, to be honest. You can do calculations out of MP5 to int, basically, if you want, right? Because all you have to do is just say, okay, it's like 2 mana per 5 seconds. So we're going to get 12 of those ticks like every minute, right? So then 12 times 2. So you're getting 24 mana a minute. And then you kind of just compare like how long you think the fight's going to be to what the equivalent value of int you would have gotten is, right? So basically, if it's 24 mana a minute and the fight is 3 minutes, then an item here that would have given you 72 mana, which I think is like, it would basically be like what, like 5 int would be the equivalent, right? So that's what that would be equivalent to on like a 3-minute fight. You kind of look at it as. It's not exactly like that because you're not getting the regen is coming in small amounts, whereas like in other words, it would be better to have the int, right? Because even if you needed to go early, you could go to save somebody, and maybe somebody else picks up the slack where they wouldn't be able to, because maybe they didn't have mana right then when you save that person. Like that's why I kind of like the int too, because it's like you save that person, and then somebody else, even if you go completely maybe they are now in their mana pot, and they can mana pot, and they can take over heals in that person. So it's not a completely accurate way to do the math, but you get kind of like the idea. It's a simple way to compare things. So this is not really bad. The Warsong gear in general, I think, is not bad. So you could definitely go with that option as well. This again, just not super into it because like way more spirit than int. This is pretty good, but oh, it's a Will and Caverns drop. Okay. Yeah, something like this is not actually too bad. It's unique, so you could compare. You could use it with the other thing. Stuff like this is pretty, like, it's whatever. The stuff is not bad for leveling, honestly. This ring is not terrible, but not great. These rings are okay as well. I think I have that as the other slot, and I just have a 6 intellect ring in there. But yeah, you'd probably want something like this, or you'd want like a ring that has double stats. Like for this one, you could probably easily swap this out or swap this out for it or something like that if you wanted. Or something like this is pretty good because you're just gaining stamina and you're gaining spirit, right? So any of that is fine, but I think I just went for this because it's like easy. This is like a quest, I believe, as well, right? Oh, okay. Never mind. You're actually not gonna have. You're not gonna be able to do that. So I guess we're not using this ring, but yeah, you can just put kind of like any of these in there. What would be like the easy alternative? Maybe probably this. These will probably be on the auction house. I'll actually check right now and see if they're on there. We'll pop in. Okay, so that's the other thing we were talking about. Why is this? Was this a ring? Oh, because I'm trolling. Okay. So I think I would just pick up like one of these. Basically, or you could pick up an int ring, right? Either one of those works. Oh, an int ring right here. So either one of those works. Or you could get one of the other blue rings that are really good, right? But they might be more expensive or a drop, so they're more difficult to get. So any of that stuff works. And for trinkets, you're not going to have shit. I don't think this is going to be available. Like, obviously, this would probably be BiS, but it's like, you're not getting that as a priest early, most likely, because guilds are going to farm it and they're going to give it to their mage, I would assume, and you don't need it anyway. This is the trinket from the actual thing. I assume what you could do is like you could just get the healing trinket and then get this one, since they're different pearls, right? So they're not actually unique with each other, and that would be your trinket essentially from BFD. But I think honestly I'd rather just have the combobulators, but you can trinket swap, right? So you can just have like a macro to use the recombobulators and then swap to this stuff. But obviously this only matters in the actual instance, and going into it you need the you want to have the recombobulators. This is like, well, yeah, you're not going to use this as a healer. Jumper cables, I didn't even know this was this low. Doesn't this come from like BFD though? I mean, if you can have this, that's just nice, but again, this is not combat stuff, right? So basically the recombobulators are what you're going to be using. And then you can like swap them out for these once you get the trinkets, or maybe there'll be other trinkets in there. Or if, if there is like a fear polymorph or stun effects in the raid, having your insignia to swap in and out is obviously good as well, right? So it's always worth picking stuff like that up. And I think that's... Oh, we have to cover the weapon. Duh. But first I wanted to check the wands, because... So all of this stuff is like... Okay, so this is like what you're going to get from the run, it seems like. So we'll ignore that. And we're going to go weapons, wand. I don't know if that's actually the same wand, or if it's like... I forget what level the wands start giving stats. It's very possible that... Maybe we have to go... We'll like lower the search a little bit to make it more comprehensive. Yeah, these may not have stats on them, honestly. Yeah, they don't. Okay. I don't think like any of these do. So your wand is just going to be like probably the highest DPS thing available. That's what you're going to want. Wow, these are like so expensive now. Holy crap. From when I was leveling, price has gone crazy. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about the wand slot at all. And then let's look at the different options here. So we have to be careful because we're going to get trolled by probably some gear that we can't really get here. This is actually a decent amount of plus healing, but like no int. It's probably going to be expensive. This is another thing, like you could absolutely get this, but it's probably just going to be better to get something else. This is what I was thinking of initially from Dead Mines. Decent amount of spirit, decent amount of int. I think I would rather have an int staff, but we'll check the auction house in a second. World drop, basically the same thing as this, right? With a little bit more intellect on it, or a little bit more stamina on it. This is good, but it's like revered, so I don't know. Like you're probably not going to have this like early, so I don't really know if this is on the table. But this is not a terrible staff to get, obviously. It's kind of like just boosting your int value even more, because you can, like I said, you convert that into int. It's probably about like an extra 6 or 7 int on a 3-minute fight, maybe a little bit more. This is just not good. Yeah, that's like not really that great, right? This is a 2-hand? Or is this a 1-hand? This is a main hand. Okay. Oh, so they're giving us like both. Okay. This is actually sort of interesting only because the poison cleansing effect you won't have on priests, so that could be useful. This is just interesting in general for damage, but not really for your BiS going into the raid. So a lot of this stuff is pretty meh. Okay, this is not terrible. It's from Silver Pine though. So I guess that's probably horde only. So you can pick up this dagger as well, but this is probably... Oh, this is from the Black Island Beeps. Okay, no kidding. So... yeah, I would say something like that, but you're probably just going to end up with a green staff, realistically. Yeah, none of this stuff is like particularly good. 6. And it's really just going to depend. It's like, can you find a like a good staff, a good green staff, or can you find a better offhand one-hand pairing, right? It's purely RNG at that point. This is from the thing, yeah, okay. This is not bad. This is fine, too. I don't really like any of that stuff. That's like okay. Yeah. I don't know if I would take this because there's like too many other things you can get that are similar int without minusing any spirit from you. Right, so let's check the auction house. Staves. Twisted Channer staff. Okay. Does this have... Well, it has a good int on it, right? So that could be an option. But as you can see, like right here, level 24, 7 int, 7 spirit. So it's like I would probably just take that over that, even. The Staff of the Owl here. And I think this can probably go to 8-8. Let's see if we can find one here with 8-8. Or maybe they cap out at that. Maybe if it actually can go to 25. I don't know if there's one at 25 or if it's 26 only. Oh, and then yeah, stuff like this. So we know that it can go to 11 on the weapon at least. So it could be like 11 spirit or 11 int. So I would probably just like pick up a cheap green staff from here, from maybe the auction house or something. But this staff is not bad at all. It gives you, again, it's like gives you the int, which is the important thing, and we have some stamina, right, which we didn't have, or which we don't have a lot of, rather. But we'll check like maces. We'll check offhand actually. Is it this still? It's armor, right? Armor, miscellaneous, held and offhand, yeah. Okay. That's fine, but I would just try and find something with int on it. But if you can't, something and that's cheap, that's fine. Yeah, like something like this is fine. So if you get something like this, and then what are we doing? Daggers. We'll check the daggers first, right? I think these are mostly bad. The daggers, I think you tend to have a hard time finding them dropping with caster stats on them, I think. They only have like the plus damage or healing. I don't think they tend to have like int and stuff on them. Like the named ones do. There's some named ones in the game that do, right? But I think these green prefix suffix ones and the other named ones, like the name drop ones that aren't from a dungeon, I think they tend to not have caster stats, so it doesn't look like that's really a good option. I think the maces, though, at least... Okay. Yeah, I don't really love just +2, honestly. I want to see if like we can get int from these, right? Oops, maybe I went too fast there. Because if you can get int from these, but I don't think you can, so I think you're basically, yeah. So you basically, I don't think you can really get int on these. Maybe you can get spirit. So you're gonna kind of want to just get the, yeah, doesn't seem like it, right? And you can't use any other type of weapon. So you're just gonna want to get a staff most likely. I'm gonna pop back into this list really quick, and we're just gonna see if like mute these. Okay, so this is from the actual raid. So if you got something like this, and then you combined it with the offhand with the 6 intellect or whatever, or the other offhand with the healing, this would be fine. So something like this, right? Or something like, I don't think that this doesn't have the intellect, the pure intellect one, but you could do something like that as well, or the pure 6 intellect, anything like that works, right? Let's go back into this and just double check. Yeah, none of this other stuff is good. So basically the only time you're using a dagger is if you get this, and then this is from the raid, or something like it's going to come from the raid at least, and none of this other stuff. Yeah. So you're basically using a staff, is the TLDR, I think, here. Obviously, if you can't get a staff, you know, just I would get like something that has like a stamina on this, and then just like the caster stats on the offhand. But if you can't get this and you can't get something like that, try and get a try and get a staff first, and then if you can't get this with an offhand, and if you can't, just get something with stamina and an offhand. But the staffs just seem to be better overall in every possible way. Like a 7/7 staff with Spirit Int is good, or the Twisted Enchanter staff or something like that. So I'll just put that here. Where is it? It's not even in here. Okay. So something like that, right? Or you can go here as well. This is fine. Because what does this have? The Twisted Enchanter staff. It's like, how far down is it, man? Is it like 10 intellect? So you're using like 5 int. Oh, I should actually check the. Yeah, I'd probably just add like intellect to this. Like none of this is going to be very good, but yeah, just add intellect. So the other good thing about having a staff, I guess, at least, because I think if you have a one hand, let's just double check it. I'll just put this on here. Okay, but that's like a. So we're just gonna put this. I'm gonna put this on just to see if the enchants differ. They don't really. Okay, so yeah. So in order to get any type of cast or chant, you want a staff too. So that just makes staff by far BiS. But it's not really going to be a huge deal, right? So yeah, I would just definitely use a staff in there. And that pretty much covers everything. So yeah. Again, 2 recombobulators, wand doesn't matter. We've covered every other slot. We've cross-referenced it with everything on the auction house. Like I said, I would not be like spending a ton of time trying to farm items from like Shadowfang Keep and stuff like that, right? Like this belt and this robe. I would just buy stuff off the auction house and go. You're probably going to have something anyways by the time you get to 25. I'm sure that will be good enough to complete the content. And I wouldn't worry about it in like super, you know, I wouldn't lose sleep over getting any of this stuff, right? Just try and follow the general philosophy here, where if you're going this build like I am, lean more into int. And if you want to try the discipline build, that's fine. But just remember, like, now we're trying to get more spirit on these pieces, right? Because your spirit is actually mattering more. And if you want to see kind of what like a distribution like that would look like with the spirit set, I'm going to be doing a druid video, and it's basically going to be the same stuff. It's just going to be leather versions. And I'm going to be trying to like weight the spirit a little bit higher in that, because druid is able to get meditation as well as the healing touch cast time reduction. So something to keep in mind. I'll probably do the druid one next. But yeah, just focus on, I would say, int, and then spirit, and then stamina. In that order. You can mix in some healing or MP5 in there. There's very few sources of MP5, a little bit more sources of healing, but you can mix those in some of those spots like this, or like this if you wanted. And if you have no good other piece for a slot, even a plus healing green is fine if you're only using it in like a couple slots or something like that, right? So yeah, don't fret over this too much, but here's the guide. I know you guys wanted it. It's fun to make, so I like it. And like I said, thank you guys for watching. If you have any other ideas, suggestions for other guides or anything like that, like I am going to be doing, obviously, the other gearing guides for the other classes, as well as the class deep dives. But aside from that, if you guys have any ideas, toss them at me, and I'll be happy to go over them. And thank you again for all the support. Please like, subscribe, and share this if you found it helpful. If you didn't, that's totally okay. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I appreciate the support. See you guys next time.